Thank you for coming. A lot of affordable housing folks here, I see. So just to regroup a little bit, last meeting, we started to go through the update to the policy procedures that you prepared for us, and we spent a lot of time, Carrie spent a lot of time on her vision, and I don't think we got as far through as we thought. So I think the intent is to continue to, and I saw there's been some emails today, I haven't been home much. So do we want to continue to go through, and what's your view for tonight then?
It's your meeting, but
Yep.
in the interim, what we prepared is another memo to you that's structured kind of like a decision from the ZBA, in the sense that we're presenting you with what we think what our findings are from the work that we've done. So sort of the facts as we found them that we think are important for you.
Have we seen this yet?
It should be in your packet. Is
Just today, it was put on the table. It was put on the table today, or you did get an email.
Yeah. So I'll walk you through it, but I just want to explain to you the structure of it. So
Let me just ask if it's in the pack. Do I have it here?
On the table.
What's it look like?
Looks just like that.
Okay.
You have yours then. There you go. Yep.
So then I have, okay.
So we're just seeing this tonight right now, so.
And we'll walk you right through it.
And I apologize for last week. I'm sure you wanted to get a little bit farther, but I felt it important
I
to.
don't think any apologies required.
Very good.
It's your
Thank
meeting. We are here to serve you.
Oh, yes.
So, as I said, this is structured where we're going to tell you what we think are the important facts that you should have in mind. The second section is the conclusions that we think can and should be drawn based on those facts. And at the very end, we give you 5 resolutions to consider as a way to move forward. And they, not surprisingly, adopt our recommendations that are structured in a way that we hope will help you move forward.
Does that relate to the draft then, or?
It's all extracted from the draft.
So, depending how we react to what you're about to go through, that may or may not cause changes to the draft that's been developed.
In our view, there's nothing that you would need to change.
There's
Oh.
nothing new.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's nothing new.
There's nothing new, it's just a rehash in a little bit different way, a little crisper way of presenting what was actually put forth 2 months ago.
Yep. Okay, so Frank will be familiar with this format. So just, I guess we could just read through it together, but the first finding we think is important and legitimate is that the fund was established with appropriate public involvement and approval in the first instance. So it's a legitimate program and the policy was adopted
What's the
proper
just
process.
To refresh me, the balance in that is about,
139.
so it's about 139,000 in that fund.
Yep.
And we have not funded that for several years.
8 years, I think.
Okay,
Yep.
5 years.
5 years?
okay.
The second thing we think is important is that the fund has been in place for a number of years and there have been several successful projects that it's contributed to. We've not seen any noticeable satisfaction from the public or otherwise about the policy or the funds, but we have picked up some comments that there's some changes that could be made to the policy to make it more accessible and then the whole objective of the fund be more successful.
I meant to say dissatisfaction. We have not.
There has not been appreciable public dissatisfaction. Yep, yep.
Not yours.
But it hasn't been overly used. We've discussed.
Number 4 is the consensus of our group is that it has not been as effective as it could be. And there are currently $140,000 or so in the fund with no applications submitted in recent years. Number 6, the town plan is the key document that we think you should access for defining the goals and strategies for the town in general, but in particular for this Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's where the town plan is the statement of pertinent policy. And in fact, the modified goal that we suggest you adopt is taken word for word from the current recently adopted town plan.
And is that what we'll, as we go through the actual draft, some of that's in here?
That's what the plan, I think, is the very first statement in that draft, yep. So in general terms, if you look at the town plan, it encourages affordable housing in general, and specifically encourages locating that in the that affordable and senior housing in the village areas, both east and west. And that town plan policy of encouraging location of affordable housing in those areas is should be an important review criteria if and when you were to look at a grant application.
Just to remind me, I think Frank asked the last time, the differentiation between affordable housing and senior housing is, or what's the difference?
One is an age distinction, age qualification, and one is a formula based on your income as it relates to median income, median household income.
But is it affordable senior housing or just senior housing?
There is senior housing that is not affordable, and there's affordable housing that's also senior housing.
Is the senior housing going to be sized on what the affordable housing is sized?
Sized by, in what sense? Square footage?
Square footage.
It's in the regulation.
That would be governed by the applicant. How do I answer that question?
If I can,
Yeah.
senior housing and affordable housing are not null sets. There's overlap.
Yeah.
Affordable senior housing.
I understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure, Lane, that was clear in responding to your question, because there has been some blurring in the way that the program has been presented in the past between those two objectives.
Right, but I'm just saying that as a qualification for this new policy,
Yeah.
for an affordable house, what is the size limit?
There is no explicit size limit. There is language in what has been put forth that it ought to be contained to smaller physical units.
So why
But
would,
that-
so if somebody for senior housing is going to get money from this document, then why wouldn't they be under the same size considerations?
They would. The questions you're asking, Frank, have not been dealt with yet. We're back behind those points, and there are some other clear policy decisions that this board needs to make before we can get to those levels. So you're going to get another swing at that.
Okay, I'm just trying, I like to see a whole picture. I hate seeing parts and pieces.
Well, you're going to get a fuller picture, but it's not a complete picture because we're dealing still in the nether zone.
Right, and within our zoning bylaws, there is no definition for senior housing.
There's no definition for, in terms of size and,
There is no definition for senior housing
in what?
in our zoning bylaws.
In what bylaws?
In our
It means the
town,
land use regulation.
in our
Oh.
town land use regulations, there is
Okay.
no definition of senior housing.
Okay. It's housing that's limited to,
There's affordable housing, but there is no senior housing. And I understand that it would be a federal guideline that talks about I think it's a 55 age.
there's opportunity that this town can take to define what the age breakdown is that qualifies for senior housing. Some say
I'm just-
55, some say 62, some say 65.
And again, going back to the fund, everybody that voted on the funds going into this were in belief that these were going to be for affordable houses,
Correct.
not senior houses.
Well, they didn't exclude senior housing.
Okay. I don't like that answer, but okay.
It's the answer. It does not say you can't use this for people who are age limited.
Oh, I don't disagree. I don't disagree that it can't be senior affordable as long as, I'm not labeling it senior affordable. I'm labeling it just affordable, whether it's a senior accepting it or not. But when the funds were appropriated and when this whole thing was set up, and over the years, it's always been for affordable housing.
Your age doesn't, I'm kind of taking Frank's side here. Your age doesn't have anything to do with this. whether you're 25 or 70, does it?
Unless you decide that you want to make a specific.
Okay, which we're not there yet, and we're not there yet.
That did not pre-exist in the
Okay.
program, and if you want to focus and get people to embrace housing for older folk, then you have opportunity to do that.
Can I just add
Sure.
something here? There's, the zoning regulations and the town plan both address senior and elderly housing. And in your decision on grants, you'd be looking at affordable, whether it's senior or whether it's non-senior housing. But there are specific definitions under the federal fair housing as to what
Right, but there's nothing in our.
senior housing is.
In our regulations that say anything about senior housing,
Well, there seems to be quite a bit.
not in the definitions.
Or maybe not in the definitions. I think elderly is in there, but in the definition that is.
I looked up senior and I couldn't find, there's no definition. And most of the things that were in our zoning bylaws that had to deal with senior dealt with the senior center.
Well, the town plan, which is the governing document in terms of encouraging affordable and senior housing, does talk about what elderly or senior housing is.
True.
And when
It
you
all-
make
it-
your decisions about this fund, it's your decision. Okay, well, this is for affordable housing, so
Right.
when you review
But
a
it also,
senior housing
it also
project.
talks about setting up a committee too. And it talks about what and it has procedures and it has duties that the committee would do.
That's all part of the decision you'll be making as you decide how to proceed with the Affordable Housing Trust
Well,
Fund.
I realize that, but I'm just wondering if we should have an affordable housing committee now.
Well, wouldn't it come after we kind
Yeah.
of figure
I mean,
out
that's
what,
all the decisions you'll
That's
be
what
making.
happens.
All of
You got
this.
the fund.
all of
really
those questions
decided.
are right, but not quite yet, maybe. We need to, this is sort of in general, get a good idea what it looks like. We're not gonna sign our name to anything until we know that we've all agreed upon the right way forward.
But I do agree that the town plan has combined the two affordable housing and senior housing together.
Okay, I think we're on number 8.
Yes.
Somebody has something? No?
Apropos of Frank's point, we think the affordable housing is, you would agree, defined in the ordinance. And the current policy, affordable trust fund, or housing trust fund policy requires that affordable housing be perpetually affordable. That's one of the requirements of the current policy. And we think that we found evidence that has deterred use of this policy by Charlotte citizens in particular. Number 10, in contrast, the nonprofit housing developers, for-profit builders working with nonprofit housing organizations are most likely going to be required to have perpetually affordable housing in the housing they develop anyway, which is to say it's redundant to a certain extent that the policy have perpetual affordability requirements, at least as to those kinds of potential grant applicants.
Well, once a contractor is done though, he's no longer bound to perpetual requirements, is he?
If he builds a house,
Yep.
and it's part of a development that's backed by a nonprofit,
Yeah,
it's very likely that nonprofit's own program requirements are going to result in that unit being
like Habitat.
perpetually affordable.
Like
Correct.
Habitat.
Right, yeah. So that part of the policy is redundant as to those folks, and by the way, they're the ones that have taken the most advantage of the policy today. And then the last finding is that the provision requiring 25 years before any repayment of the grant without stiff penalties has also deterred participation by Charlotte residents in this fund. So there are other things that we've talked about, but we think that these are the pertinent ones for the purpose of what we'd like you to look at tonight. So we have 5 conclusions that we've drawn from those facts and the work that you've asked us to do. That there should be no change in the original intent of the fund, but that it should continue to provide grants that will encourage the building of affordable housing in Charlotte. So to your concern about whether this is drifting into senior housing or whatever, we're not arguing or suggesting that the main purpose of the fund should be changed in any way. But we don't think that perpetual affordability ought to be a requirement for grants under the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There should be some flexibility in that.
So are we considering a timeframe for when it would have to be repaid?
We don't have a specific.
As in, if they have it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
We think that after 5 years, the grant should be eligible to be repaid. If it's an individual Charlotte citizen who's received the grant, and you'll see that as one of our.
Should have to repay it in 5 years, or doesn't have to repay it after 5 years?
Has the option to. So they would not be able to
Right, so they'd be able to do a buyout basically and reclaim their full use of that particular unit.
they could pay the money back and remove the affordability restriction on the unit. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Actually, that's number 4, as Carrie points out. The last conclusion is that we think some active effort to promote this is called for, and that you should consider even using some of the funds to defray the cost of promoting and marketing the program so that it's more utilized. Questions or thoughts?
Examples of promotion.
Putting it in the paper.
Yeah, put it in the paper, holding a seminar here or informational meeting where people who are interested in it can come and ask questions. Identifying possibly even, homes or properties that have potential and inquiring if they'd be interested in taking advantage of it. I think that, in this day and age, there's a lot of ways to put information out there. Front Porch Forum is pretty effective. But
I'm kind of glad that it's only been 5 years since the program's been used, because the way you talk, it's like I thought maybe it was like 10 years. So 5 years and we're renewing it, and it makes sense to me to look at it now, but I think we've done pretty well, up until the last few years. But
that was one of our
lots going
first
on.
conversations sitting around this table at our first meeting, was there was some, this thing's all broken and messed up, and actually after looking at it and talking through it, we reached the conclusion that's not really fair. It's actually been reasonably successful.
Sure,
Yeah.
I agree.
I wonder, it's probably too early to ask this question, but if we do promote it and, agree to policy, we probably ought to reconsider adding some funds to it in the next budget, and we'll have to try to address that over the next 3 or 4 months.
Good thing Fritz isn't here, because he would
I
like
say
to
a
say
little
that.
early for that.
But
I can see
clearly, the idea is
conversation,
if it's
yes.
meeting an objective of the town that's stated in the town plan, and everybody generally supports it, and that requires some funding, would be,
That's one way to find out, huh?
right?
So I was wondering, I know where I can see affordable housing in East Charlotte. Where do you see it in the village area here? Where would we expect, or sometimes I need a visual of how to put the whole plan together.
I think it's too early to try to
That too.
identify that. What we're
And
trying to do is to fix and improve the program
Right,
and not decide on where monies might be targeted.
yeah,
The directive from the town plan is to first look in the village.
Right.
for opportunities in the village.
Right, and I just didn't know if there was,
Well, there's a
Just-
for sale sign right
okay,
over
very
there.
good, okay,
Yep.
so there we go,
And
I like
couldn't help but
that,
notice
there
the
you
Levesque
go.
Trust is,
Yep,
Levesque
I
Trust
agree.
is tidying up and cleaning up and.
Okay, very good,
Probably a property, it's certainly a property that's been looked at for,
sure, a long time.
Yep.
And so that's where we could, see our growth potentially growing forward, okay, great,
yep.
that's.
And there's,
what I wanted to hear.
lots of larger houses with carriage houses in the back and detached improvements on the same lot in the village that could potentially be benefited by this. Nancy Saban's house, I think, was, did she get a grant?
She got a planning grant.
She got a planning grant, yeah, so that's a
I've known
possibility.
quite a few people who benefited from the program, myself included, because the builders came to the store. So it was like,
Uh-huh.
win-win for everyone. So, well, how you prosper, all of it.
Right?
So great.
So if a contractor wanted to invest, 5 units in property out here or something, a construction project could qualify going through our format.
And that's where that $50,000 to $100,000, is that saying that we would give one builder possibly $100,000?
That would be the
Project.
maximum
The
award
maximum.
grant for construction.
Where did I see that?
It's resolution 3 on the very last page.
Yeah.
So $30,000 per unit and $100,000 per project.
So they had 30,000 for the one you've been looking at. Was the 100,000 in there too? Or is that, no, like,
What's your question?
so has it always been 30,000 per unit or up to $100,000 for a project?
It was 10,000.
That's what we're
Oh,
changing.
okay,
Yeah.
that,
That's
okay.
an increase. In 50 was the other maximum cap per project? 30?
It's 10 and 30.
So 10 and 30, we're recommending goes to 30 and 100.
Okay, I do remember the 10 and 30 now that, and so you're recommending 30,000 up to 100,000.
So 30,000 per unit in a project, or if it's just a single unit, no more than 30, but if it's multiple units in a project, up to $100,000.
I'd like to go back to number 1 in terms of how we were suggesting that the board.
Funding for resolution 1?
Yeah, the 5. And trying to say, okay, let's settle in on these policy changes.
Okay.
And then if, these are sort of the threshold policy changes from our standpoint that need to get established by the board. And
Okay.
then we would probably broaden the conversation and come back with some specific program redesign procedures and get into some of the issues that Frank has been appropriately poking at that aren't really ready to be wrestled with until you've decided that, no, we get it, we want to change these things, and we've got some specific language for you to tussle with.
So the first line in number 1, we've always favored a grant to a Charlotte resident over any, we want to keep that, of
What
course.
the existing program does, it identifies a series of priorities, and there are about a dozen of them. And it says we want to have priority for current property owners in Charlotte, as distinct from people like not the nonprofits who have been involved in it. So we want that. We want priority for units of this particular complexion. We want them located, dispersed around the town, not just in the east or west village. I mean, it doesn't say in not in, it just says we want them dispersed. So there are a series of priorities. It says we want to have projects that get the most bang for the buck, that require the least amount of subsidy. Well, what does that mean? So anyway, what we are saying is that we think you ought to suspend all those priorities, particularly the ones about having to do with you got to be a property owner, not a nonprofit. You got to be willing to do other things with the program. What are the others, Mike, that are in that resolution, number one?
Dwellings for rent over sales, rehabilitation over new construction.
Those are the other two features that are specified as priorities. We favor
Oh, you wanna
rental
take
units
those out?
over sales. We want to have those have priority. And
That's what's in the current
in
document.
the current, and we want to have rehabilitation projects, not new construction.
Is in the
Well, it
current
turns
document.
out that the way the program is operated, nonprofits have been serious participants. They have done new construction and so forth. So he said, let's get rid of the priorities and start over.
So that gives, purpose of that gives more flexibility in the approval process?
Like a lot of things, it gives you an opportunity to review more grant applications because people are not, or organizations are not immediately put off and say, well, there's no point in even trying. You could still have those kinds of criteria, but they wouldn't, but they would be discretionary in the course of reviewing the application. They wouldn't disqualify an application, perhaps.
I'm forgetting, who's the approval authority? Is it Affordable Housing Committee?
Right now,
Select
it's
Board?
you.
Okay.
There was a committee that's been disbanded, and that authority and that role is now yours.
But you may want to have some other group of people who are screening applications so that you're not being hit when this thing does light fire.
Yeah, I think in the town plan, I think it said that it was supposed to be
That's what,
a affordable senior housing committee. And they looked through the applications and did everything and then made the recommendation to the select board to make the final approval. I think that's what it said in the town plan.
That's the aspirational objective, yeah? And is that what you would tend to want?
So then we haven't, we get through this
I
process.
was just stating that even though it was, you keep repeating what's been in the town plan, so I was just reiterating what was in the town plan, and it would still come before the select board with, even if there was a affordable housing, senior housing committee.
Right.
So we would just put together a committee, as we do other interview candidates, have a committee, and as an application come in, that committee would review?
And it would, not only that, but it would also review this policy that we're looking at. If time came necessary, it need to be reviewed again, and
I see. Yeah.
And the promotional aspect that we're recommending could also be, it could be a charge of that committee as well.
sure.
Frank, it doesn't explicitly say that the Affordable Housing Committee is reconstituted. It should be the screen through which projects pass before they get to you. That's not to say that that might not
But
be a
part,
good idea.
one of the things in our town plan said that it was, that the town, there was supposed to be an affordable senior housing committee.
That's correct, yeah. No, I'm looking at it right here.
If you want, I'll look at it myself. I got my own copy of the
Yeah,
town
it
plan
says
right here.
specifically reappoint members to an affordable senior housing committee.
Right, but it doesn't tie it explicitly to the function of the trust fund.
No, but I mean, that would be something that it could be part of their
Exactly,
duties.
exactly.
so could you talk to me about number 4?
Do you want to go in order?
Done,
So,
or-
I think we're going in order. I think there's a general consensus of agreement to your number 1. You guys concur? I think they're kind of asking
know
us
yet.
our opinion, huh?
Well, we'll see what it looks like when it's all together. I've only had this last half hour
Well, it's a
to
concept that
really,
they're,
and I get it. I just need to see how the concept works overall. So,
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is the first time I've seen it tonight, so I wouldn't probably, I don't know if I would vote on something at this time, because I'd want to look at it a little closer.
Just to be a little bit clear, what we're saying and recommending that you embrace is to set aside those priorities, which could be and probably will be replaced with other criteria.
Okay, that's the word I was
And
looking for.
that's when you're gonna
Other
get
criteria.
another swing
Does
at
it
it.
say that, or
But,
we
no, it
will
doesn't.
get to do
But
that?
that's what it means, so that we're not trying to develop a redesigned program and have you say, well, wait a second, I'm not sure that we really, I mean, the existing program
Because I
says.
like some
so
of
we're
the
saying,
criteria.
clean it up, get
Got
rid of
it.
that for these reasons, and then anticipate a time when you're gonna replace it with some other procedures.
And that'll be written in this paragraph or when we're,
Reflected in the revised policy.
Very good.
Also.
thank you.
Yep.
Does that seem like that would,
So
makes
this
me
says,
happy
that- so
going
number 2
forward.
says it to be,
that?
that
Makes
Shalott
me
property
happy going
owners can
forward
be
if we can
repaid without
another
financial penalties.
look
Does
at
that
it
mean
before.
somebody
That's
that's
what I'm
not a
thinking.
Shalott property owner can be?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Number 2, grant awards that are made to Shalott property owners can be repaid without financial penalties after 5 years of completion or occupancy. Can a non-Shalott landowner or property owner, they don't have to, they have to pay, they don't have, they can't repay it?
After
Who else is there, Frank? I mean, all the property in Shalott is owned by Shalott property owners. It may not all be owned
I
by
d-
Shalott residents.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm just,
I just don't know what
Why-
else
why-
you have
why-
jurisdiction over other
why,
than
why,
Shalott
put-
property
why
owners.
put Shalott property owners in there?
Oh, the issue here is to distinguish nonprofits which have access to other resources, which do carry the weight of perpetual affordability in Vermont. And it's to distinguish those from property owners who are not mission-driven nonprofits.
It's fine.
That's what that
Yep.
means.
I'd be concerned about, or not concerned, but my thoughts on number 3 is, would there be enough money to go around if somebody takes, $90,000 for their project and 5 other people want to get in there too, because we've advertised well, and so,
These are maximums. You could always grant less. If you had a queue with, some interesting looking projects, it's a maximum. It just means
Okay.
then you decide,
so if it made sense to do 90,000, you could,
right, and
I
nobody's
see
in the
here.
queue,
Uh-huh.
and it's a
Okay.
great project. It just seemed more realistic
I see.
to up the dollar amounts.
Sure.
But you could always grant less than the max.
okay, very good.
Yeah, I think going back to the idea of making some changes that will increase the number of opportunities to review applications and projects.
I can see that.
Somebody swings for the seats with a big grant, and maybe you don't give it all, but at least you got a chance to see that application.
All right.
So on number 4, you're talking about section 4.4, land use regulations to meet perpetual affordability requirements for bonuses, for density bonuses. Are you thinking of some kind of way to incorporate that with the planning commission when they're doing their PUDs and PRDs?
Well, that's certainly likely how this would come to pass, right? You apply for a grant that would include a project that the grantees either already obtained a partial approval or full approval for density bonuses, and then come to the grant application process and say, we've got density bonuses, will you
Would
give
that,
us some money?
right, but would it be something that would be on an application or something so that they would know to, it would be something that could be obtained so they get knowledge of this particular program? If they're,
Part of the marketing.
if they're, because I know there's some questionnaires that we've been working on. So when And one of them is affordable housing questionnaire. And maybe that would be a place to have a question of, are you or do you want to apply for an affordable housing or senior housing grant?
Absolutely. That would be a very appropriate place to have that.
So what's a density bonus? What's that mean?
It means that if a person has a PRD or PUD of a development, sometimes they'll get an extra bonus of an extra house or an extra lot because of said it's going to be affordable or elderly housing. And it may be more than one. It depends on the size of the development.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Frank, but currently in the zoning regulations, in that case, it has to be perpetually affordable. So the grant
According
could
to our
not be repaid in that case
Right.
because it has to stay.
According to our
perpetually
regulations, if you get a density bonus, it does have to be
Yes.
perpetually affordable. Usually, I mean, in our zoning bylaws, it says something about covenants or on the deed or some
Right.
other form.
affordable. So that's a situation where, even though it's a Sherlock property owner or whatever, they can't pay the money back and do away with perpetual affordability unless there's a change in the zoning regulations or some process that you have to change that. That would be the ruling regulation.
Right.
So this one that we have, are we done?
Is that policy?
Yes. Are these in here?
I
Because we're
believe
just
so.
seeing this today.
Yeah,
so-
I believe you'll find that the specific policy changes that would result from you adopting these resolutions are already reflected in the draft that you provided before.
Carrie, what our idea was, because the policy obviously has a lot of, verbiage like any policy. And so what we tried to do with this is just get the real bullet points in that and take it out of all the language
Yeah, thank you.
that has to be in there, kind of the boilerplate. And this is sort of a distilled version of what we thought were the key changes we're recommending.
Okay,
So
great.
that it would be easier to see the key points as opposed to getting into all the boilerplate and looking for them, if that makes sense.
Right, so I'd be able to, look at this and
Well,
now I
yeah.
can read this or
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
yeah,
right, sure.
So that's what Mike
That's-
has done, is try to distill
Yep,
what's
so just
in our
merge the two
draft
together.
in a
Perfect.
way that you could just see the real pieces.
So as an example, number one, this, doing away with these restrictions, where do I see that, how you've written it in the new policy? Where do I see it addressed? When you talk about,
And when you say the new policy in the July 16, 28,
the one that we have that's a draft that we're we're working from.
and that's also more of a summarized document. That does not have all the boilerplate in it either, but it hits all the same key areas.
Yeah, the current policy has this section 3 priorities for funding, and that's
Oh, I
not,
thought this was a wash-off of the old.
it is.
That reflects, so this is standalone by itself, other than the attachments, which haven't been created yet,
The effect of that resolution is in here because you'll find no priorities.
because there's none there.
Right,
Okay, well, that answers the question.
hard to
So
find it in there.
Carrie or Frank said, you're gonna set aside other criteria, but in fact, you haven't done that yet.
I think we said that they would be approved by the select board.
Other criteria.
Yeah, the additional guideline, they may be replaced by guidelines approved by the select board.
But let me take another swing at that because you're hitting on something that's important.
Okay,
What the July 16th document does,
that's the,
Right here.
okay,
it says that the funds can be used for new construction. It says that they can be used for home ownership units. It says that they can be used for, or they can be, do not require perpetual affordability. So all those features ripple through that document. We said, wait a second, before we try to take this to the next level and actually develop documents that have application requirements, income limits, sample grant agreement, and all the plumbing that's needed in order to affect the changes in the program, we got to get the board to say, yeah, we buy into this. The priorities that have previously been stated don't apply, they haven't applied well, favoring Shalat property owners over nonprofits really hasn't worked particularly well, embracing rehab over new construction. There's been very little rehab that's gone on. There's been a lot more new construction. We need to get that acknowledged. And if that becomes embraced, if those policy changes become embraced by this board, we'll go back to work and come back with further definition of how this thing could work.
So putting more meat on the bones
Exactly.
of the July
But
16th.
we got to get the bones identified, because if you're still being vacillating about the bones, then it doesn't make any sense to take this thing further.
And these are the bones.
Well,
Or
These are
some
5
of
bones.
it.
Those are the
Five
proposed
bones.
bones,
And we think they make sense, and there's nothing fresher, there's nothing new.
Agree.
It or goes back to May, actually.
okay, so I mean, it makes sense to me, what you've said, the conditions that you've applied. I mean, how's the board feel? Do you want to encourage proceeding, or?
Yes, I think so. I've written agree on just about everything. So,
You said a minute ago that you wanted
Time to
more
think.
prepared to vote on this right tonight, is that?
You're
well,
looking,
is there, I'm not sure why we'd have to vote on it. Can't we just be in agreement that what are we voting on?
good question. You're right.
I want to vote when it's all said and done, or, we've
Well,
all
I
agreed.
think I said at the last meeting when somebody asked who's gonna do this work to, and I think
And you're
what I
afraid
said is
that-
that, there are some of us in the room that are willing to do all the rest of the work that would result in a final policy,
Yeah.
but not until we're clear on the bones. And these 5 resolutions are what we think you should consider to adopt, so that we are sure that we're aiming at those policy objectives. Otherwise, we'll get back into reviewing word by word the policy that we've drafted that may drift in another direction.
Let me say that what you put in your 5, whatever you title the 5 conditions, we've all 5 of us have seen this. This is not new. You've reiterated, you've wordsmithed a little bit. So I think via the minutes, I think we encourage you to proceed. I mean, do we really need to vote, or are you?
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Why are you nervous about voting? Why is it of concern to say, we want to stand behind the ridding the program of these stated priorities, acknowledging that they may be replaced from time to time by other guidelines as may be approved by the select board? I mean, so there's a kernel there. The second thing is that we're saying that the grant awards may be repaid. They don't need to be held in perpetuity and encumber properties forever. Haven't we made that case? The third one is that a maximum award can exceed the current ceiling. And there's a lot of opportunity within that to fine tune it, to say these are the steps that you would need to take, but this is a maximum. I'm sorry, to go on here. Then the fourth point has to do with relating to the density bonus, the trust fund grant program. And it says, basically, if you're in a density bonus circumstance, you got to be perpetually affordable. We're not saying that that's overridden at this point. And then the fifth one is an easy give. It just says that we recognize that the program needs to be promoted.
I mean, to answer your question, this is all new territory for me. Never been involved at all. I think what you're doing is great. I think you've got a lot of strong supporting cast here.
I think what has to be, what I've heard is, maybe we're at the point now where we put an actual committee together. You've been an ad hoc committee. I think that we should put it out because from here it gets even bigger and more bones and in some ways, or it really needs a lot of work or not, whatever.
Well, my answer to that comment is,
And I think it needs to be an appointed committee would be my process.
my concern, Carrie, there is, or my issue, we have a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people sitting right here that want to help us with
And
this.
I would hope every one of those folks were on that team and you add 3 more sets of eyes, 3 more comments. So I feel that way. I'm not sorry at all that I feel that way. I think we never put it out to the town. As soon as you said it, Nancy, we jumped and so kind of, and here we are and you've done really great. I think it's really great. I think the next step to show my commitment would be to form another committee that would take it forward. That's the way I'm feeling.
Where are you heading on this, Frank?
Well, at this point, I'm fine with 2, 3, 2, 4, and 5. 3, the amounts, they seem reasonable. With 1, it talks about are withdrawn, so what does that mean?
Well, they're just not, there wouldn't be restrictions like there is now. They want you to mostly rent over selling it. They want rehab for barns and whatnot. And we
Right,
can
but
add stuff
it
like
says
at
that,
the
and then
end.
it says are withdrawn.
Right, those are the current priorities in the current
Well,
policy.
those are the current
Right,
priorities.
they're not in
Which
here.
are, if
So
you
there,
look at,
so in your proposal, you're proposing to take out all of those priorities.
Based on our observation that Peter spoke a minute ago, which is that if you look at the history of who's applied and what grants have been awarded, those priorities have not been reflected in the actual grants that were awarded,
People,
which tells you that maybe the priorities need to be adjusted, because if you've got a priority, the grant award should lead to that type of project being approved and funded, and that's not what's happened.
Well,
So-
that's because they weren't applied for.
And
wasn't attractive enough.
what,
I mean, there's no reason for priorities if you only have one person coming in a year. The priorities don't mean anything.
well,
For, you know,
that assumes you're going to make an award.
Relatively, they don't mean anything if you only have one person coming in once a year. If you had 2 people coming in at the same time, you might say, okay, priority 1 over the other, but when you're only looking at one application,
Once this gets going, we're gonna look at about 5 right away.
that'll be good.
Good. All right.
Well, that didn't feel like a finished thought, though. You're saying,
Well, I'm just wondering if there still should be some, why wouldn't you say Charlotte residents over anybody else?
We can do
Which
that.
which is gonna be put into effect of, they aren't looking at it anyways a lot of times. It's been the nonprofits that have been doing the applications for it, so it was a nonprofit looking for the grant, not a Charlotte resident anyways. Unless a Charlotte resident happened to come in at the same exact time, and then you might prioritize one over the other, but I don't see, I'm hoping that it might come together where you have to worry about trying to prioritize one over the other, but
Well, the actual answer to that is that your Garden Variety Charlotte resident is not going to have enough money to get one of these deals done. It just doesn't pencil out, it doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work for $10,000 a unit.
no.
So you need, with one exception, Every unit that's been produced under the program has been by a nonprofit that has had access and has used other resources. So, but this is not saying it, Frank, replace this, and this is an articulation of the replacement policy. What this says is, have this board say, we get it, we want to have this policy of priorities set aside, and have us from time to time, starting when this program is redesigned, change it, modify it, make it more realistic, embrace other, recognize that if you're going to build a new unit, it's going to cost more than $100,000, and nobody's going to put 90 into it and have it be affordable.
Here's what I'm thinking. I think the work you guys are doing is great, and we have just seen this tonight. We have 2 people missing. What I'd like to do as a compromise, and that is for us, for the next meeting, have an agenda, have a motion prepared that are your 5 statements, so we can think about them for 2 weeks. Should have the whole board here, and let us vote on it formally that way. I mean, I hear Carrie, I for one don't want to go through the bureaucracy of advertising and lose a month or 2 in a committee. That's my opinion. I think we got you guys cornered. You want to work, so let's formalize it through a motion. We'll do it in 2 weeks and see how it triggers out, and I expect we'd have all 5 people here. And it's nothing, as I've said, this isn't really new to what you've shown us, but you've made it a little more concise, and we can, we'll just have hopefully a quick vote on it. You'll have a chance to read it, and then we'll give you a more formal response. Is that acceptable?
Terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right at 7 o'clock.
And it's 7 o'clock, look at that. I see fire and rescue out here. They might take out the front floor here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's do that, Dean, as far as an agenda item.
Yep.
Clark got his hand up.
Who had their hand up? Clark?
I was going to recommend 2 things, one of which you already recommended, which is that you vote on it at the next meeting.
Yeah,
And then second is don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Right.
You've got a committee. You know how hard it is to get volunteers to fill positions. Use them for this transitional spot. We are in the process of having done a town plan, and now we need to implement it by changing zoning, policies, different things. So we're in that spot to do that. And then the final thing I was going to say is that you're certainly going to get a couple applications from East July. And one of the big issues that you should know there is going to be, in order to cluster like it's proposed, you're going to have to cross municipal right-of-ways with utility easements.
thank you. Said what I was thinking eloquently. Thank you. That's good. That's why I looked at it. Or I think we did. 7 o'clock. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Are there any public comments? It's all fire and rescue, the only ones here. This is the board we have tonight. We have 3 out of 5 of us. We have a majority.
So,
Yeah.
I know the main topic is budget and results
Which I believe we have, right?
for 2018, which you should have. But I was wondering if we could quickly just start with this document, which is, I think it's an important starting point to give perspective on things. And what it represents is a pretty large effort on a number of, from a number of people to update the overall bylaws of CVFRS. And essentially to create one document that's a reflection of the new structure.
Do we have a copy of the old one?
I don't know that, well, I don't have one to hand to you. We can certainly get you one.
Just to kind of compare what's changing.
But what I can do is quickly take you through sort of the high points where you can see what has changed and
Okay.
why I think it's an important place to start. If you look just overall, from a big picture standpoint, the reason why it was necessary to have a whole new set of bylaws is that we've got a new unified leadership structure, right? And in the past, we essentially kind of had EMS bylaws and we had fire bylaws, and what this represents, and corporate bylaws, and this represents a merging into one entity and one set of bylaws. It's a reflection of a more efficient organization. It's a reflection of all the people across the street sort of pulling in one direction. And I think it was, I think it's an important reflection of the change. One of the key differences, Frank, to your question is, if you go through this, what you'll see is that for the first time ever, a paid, for example, EMS per diem can become a voting member. And that's significant in the sense that it adds the potential for a much larger body, much larger voting body to affect decision-making and policy and whatnot. And in some respects...
So what's the difference between the number of voting people that existed before and now?
Well, as of...
It might add 10.
We added 10 almost right off the bat as a result.
It gives them a bigger sense of buy-in, and we get input from the people that are there.
So before there
More
was, you had fire, and then you had rescue, and then you had corporate.
Corporate was an entity, not that
I
both
was
fire.
corporate.
Yes, that
Okay,
was,
so fire and rescue each had how many members? Or board members, or whatever you want to call them?
Fire is, let's talk about members, not board members.
Okay.
So members on fire, there were probably 15 to 20 active volunteers. And a lot of this change, Frank, came from the change in dynamics on the rescue side of the organization, which used to be predominantly volunteer with some paid per diems, has made the transition that it's almost 90% paid versus volunteers. So as far as active volunteers pulling shifts every week, I would say you probably have less than 5 volunteers. The majority of those 28 slots, because you got to remember we run 24/7, so it's 7 days a week. There's 4 individuals, 2 on the daytime, 2 on the nighttime. So of those 28 available slots, less than 3 are taken with volunteers right now, so the other 25 12-hour slots are paid per diems.
So how many paid?
I'll take that back, with the exception of 3 that are covered by our 1 full-time paramedic.
How many people is that, though? I mean, you said 20 generally, members of fire, how many?
So now, under the new organization,
Rescue.
rescue,
On
because there's
rescue-
certain criteria that has to be met. They have to have been employed for more than a year, they have to have pulled a certain number of hours.
300 hours, I think. it is.
Right. In the prior 12-month period, I believe we took into consideration 10.
Yeah, there's about 10 new
At
ads.
last week's meeting, I know from the document that we had those individuals sign, there's been one that does not want to become a member, just wants to continue on in his way. It's not a requirement of employment. So I've received back 4 or 5 in the affirmative, and one just wants to just continue on.
Did
and continue
rescue,
on.
fire had a board and rescue had a board before?
as voting members, yes, we have more of the volunteers, so we had a larger number of voting members.
You do now?
We still do, yeah.
Okay, you still.
So you just said 20 fire voting members?
15 to 20 fire voting members, and now you'll have 10 to 15
Okay.
on the rescue side. So it
and every
equalizes the
quarter-
voice.
And every quarter, as new statistics become available in terms of EMS people that are actively participating and are part of a culture, they will have the option to become a member each quarter. as we take a look at the data from activity. So it's just a way to, it's a way to expand the membership, give more people a say in what goes on in the.
You may have just said this, but per diem, people you're hiring in,
Right.
do they fall in that category as a voting member?
They can if
they do that
Patricia
requirement.
said, assuming they're active and they're part of the culture.
Active, greater than 1 year's worth of experience, worth of activity with us.
This gives the people who are there more often the voice. You take the few volunteers on rescue that are there, they come in, they do their one shift a week at night, usually, because they're doing other jobs, and that's all you can expect the volunteers. But they're not there exposed to the constant day in, day out of what actually happens there and what the community needs and is facing. So it actually gives us a broader pool of people with experience to help us help the community.
So you look at.
And all those per diems typically work for other services as well, so we'll glean some of that information.
Sure.
Total number of board members, 2 members at large within the organization, up to 3 community members, one of which is select board liaison.
Actually, Dean, can you bring up that new
President,
board of
vice
directors that I sent you
president,
over?
secretary, and treasurer.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw something on the, I
that's
think I
it.
got an email that had the list on it.
3 community,
Up to 3 community, one of which is select board liaison. 2 members at large from the actual membership group. This gentleman right here,
Chief of department, deputy chief.
our business manager, and president, VP, secretary, and treasurer. Fill out the roster.
36, about 8 or so.
Yeah, thereabouts.
So you're gonna go from 8, and you're gonna add maybe 35 to that for
No,
voting.
they're not
No.
board members.
That's
The
just
board
the-
But for voting, everybody gets the
For
vote.
voting, yes.
The 8 and the 35.
But these, a share of these 8 on the board are voting members within their departments.
Okay.
Me, Tom,
Okay, you do
So-
both.
so,
They only get 1 vote, though.
yeah.
They
Gotcha.
don't get 1 as a board member and 1.
And I was gonna ask for the select board rep, but you got that covered, because I didn't see it in here.
So not to digress too much, but if you open this document up, you look at, for example, Article 2 is just what we just talked about, membership and the qualifications. Article 3 is about the board, and the emphasis of the board is to stay out of the day-to-day operations, more so than ever before, and to be just a set of checks and balances. Technically, the chief and CDFRS chief and the business manager report to the board. So it's a set of checks and balances, but the board is more about policy making, not about operations. In the past, there'd been some operational involvement, which to me never made sense. If you continue on, flip over to the continuation of Article 4 on corporate and operational officers. Just another piece to point out in Section 9, the business manager, Patrice, her role and her authority have been expanded. Her authority to make decisions and her role within the organization. And lastly, but maybe most importantly, if you look at Article 10, which is Budget and Finance, please note the very first sentence, second sentence actually, the Board of Directors will show fiscal responsibility in creating a budget to efficiently serve the community. I mean, to me, that was the primary reason in bringing this document, to show you, yes, it's new, but it's about fiscal responsibility. There's references to, just as there has been, in the MOA in the past, there's references to both public and private monies, and very similar to the way the MOA phraseology is. But anyway, you can see the emphasis in this document. It's short. It's shorter than the old one, more to the point, but it's certainly a consolidated view everything that goes on across the street.
Where's your sentence on fiscal responsibility? I didn't follow where you said that was.
In section 10, budget and finance, second sentence.
Article
Oh, okay,
10,
got it,
section
okay.
1.
Section 1, second sentence.
Okay. Section, okay.
So in the past, Lane, as we approached the end of a fiscal year where we were looking at a deficit spending, it was department versus department. It was like, well, if I've budgeted this, I'm going to spend that because that's what I budgeted and I need those things. And the other department would be like, well, I'm over budget, but I'm going to just keep on spending. Now the responsibility all lies with the chief of department. He's responsible for both budgets and balancing those and determining what needs outweigh the other and prioritizing what the spending is. So one of the things that I saw during our fourth quarter this year was restraint on the fire side when you look at the department spending, because rescue had been running over budget, and after the leadership change that the board enacted, that fire actually withheld doing some of their spending so that as a corporation as a whole, we would come in
Landed the ship.
right about on budget. We're slightly over budget as the year ended, but that was a departure from how things would have been in the past.
So if you take a look at, presumably you have Charlotte Fire and Rescue Services preliminary budget versus actuals,
Yep.
with an emphasis on the word preliminary. You should have in the Dropbox, what we've got, everything that we produce is in the Dropbox. And the one common denominator on all of it is that every one of those exhibits will say preliminary for now. But a couple of quick items to point out, and then we could, take a deeper dive
Let me
anywhere
just
you
see,
want.
let me just make sure I understand what you said on the policy. So that, what you've just explained, Patrice, you now have a consolidated budget, is that right, Rick?
Well, it's still the same, it's broken into by
You're
department.
going to break it into two departments, okay.
Right, because we still want to track our spending
That's
based
for
upon
us as much as
departments.
for anyone, so I know.
And the importance of that is you still have chiefs and battalion chiefs, one that's specifically rescue and one that's specifically fire. Both of those report up to Dick, who's the ultimate decision maker as far as, prioritizing that spending
Okay,
and
so
whatnot.
we see that under expenses. Your
Right.
income is,
The income is
A little more
consolidated,
stable.
and then we isolate those expenses that are directly related to corporate,
oh, got it, yep.
and then those items that are specifically related to fire and/or rescue.
So this
The
is not
important-
a change.
Right. The
Okay.
importance of that separation, Lane, is because under statute, the Selectboard, the town of Charlotte, is required to provide fire prevention and suppression services, not necessarily rescue. So I think it's important for you to still be able to see, where is that spending happening? Whereas if we consolidated both of those departments under one heading
You
now,
lose the-
you would lose that transparency.
Yep.
So I think it's important for you guys to see that, for us to see that.
Ultimately, we want to break it out anyway, so it's just easier to have it status quo. A couple of observations. If you look at the top in the income section, line item 4004, ambulance agency, notice that we ended up paying more to Montpelier than was anticipated, 4,200 versus 3,700. Intercept billing, line item 4005, was a little bit more than what was originally projected to be, 7,000 versus 6,000. And the bigger wild card, in a sense, in the income section is program services income, where you had this, unpredictable, unreliable, unpredictable cash flow that might come or might not come. You can't predict it, but it did come, it arrived, so we had that $10,750 line item.
I'll just add that that relates directly back to the action that you took the last time we were here, and codifying the hazmat ordinance,
Right.
the majority of that 10,750 is hazmat billing.
Oh, so that's
Right.
billing or insurance
And
payments?
that's why Tom was referring to it, that it's unpredictable.
Some of it's actually classes we teach and charge other people also, but that's a very small amount compared to what.
People that buy E911 signs, that revenue goes in that line item as well. But again, as a percentage, it's negligible.
So overall income came in, as you can see, almost 104%, 4% over what was originally projected. If you get down to the expenses section under corporate, you can just quickly eyeball, you can see that, for example, line items 5101-1-2-3, the utilities were above what was projected. It's not something you can predict utility rates and fuel consumption and whatnot, but it is what it is. I jump over, if you would please, to the next page.
Why so much fuel oil? It's not quite a bit more.
And actually, we made a change in the last 2 years, Carrie, that we're not using number one heating oil anymore. We've switched to kerosene. So our expense from a fuel standpoint has actually decreased in comparison to what it could have been. You also have to remember that when we're budgeting for those utilities, we are 18 months out, so we don't even know what the current heating season price is, let alone the one 18 months further in the future.
Who's to know whether Iran is going to stop exporting, or who knows. But if you flip over to the next page, overall corporate expenses came in just, as you can see, about 101% of original budget. Down under the fire section, Chief, maybe you could speak to, if you look at line item 52007 hose, I think this was pre-ordering hose. We were able to get a better deal by coupling with Shelburne.
That we coupled the purchase of the hose for the new engine with Shelburne ahead of time when they were purchasing the hose for their new ladder truck they bought, and it gave us a substantial discount. And plus the dealer was able to let us split it over 2 years. They sold it to us in June and July, so we were able to work it out of budget over a 2-year period.
So while it looks like 178% of budget was spent, there was a good rationale for it. It would be money that would be going over and carrying over into 2019 fiscal 19 otherwise. If you scoot down a little bit further, total fire overall came in, as you can see, pretty substantially under budget. Almost just about 94% of budget, so 6% under. In the rescue side, under rescue equipment maintenance, line item 53002, 243% of the original budget. There were a number of things like the Lucas, and Patrice, you'll have to help me think, because there's a couple of other examples where we realized that we did not have a bona fide maintenance agreement up and running on a particular piece of equipment.
The AEDs and the Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah, say that out loud.
The AEDs that we had purchased did not have an annual maintenance agreement with them. And when you're talking items like that, the automatic defibrillators.
You just can't go down the road without a maintenance agreement. So
Yeah.
to catch ourselves up, we implemented just that, and that's why that number was above what we had originally expected it to be. If you go down to, let's see, line item 53101, EMT payroll and related, this is the big one, right? This is 105% of budget on the biggest line item we've got. This is a function of overtime. There's a reason why there's a change in leadership, and it's because it got increasingly uncomfortable for a lot of us to sit and watch this overtime kind of ticking away. And a certain amount of overtime is inevitable, right? At holidays, you got to have coverage Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and you've got to pay holiday overtime, so it's inevitable. But there was there wasn't this sensitivity to the town and to caring about property taxes in many people's view over there, myself included, and that's why things got pretty uncomfortable for the leadership at the time, and that's why that leadership is not there anymore, honestly. So we made significant dent in the, from certainly in the last 4 months on overtime, and it ends up, it's a culture. It's like you're leaning against a culture of
We've
people
changed scheduling practices. We've put it under someone's control so she can monitor even beforehand that there's not scheduled overtime to start the month. Yeah, you have someone bang out sick and you can't fill the slot, you might have to pay overtime. That does
Isn't that
happen.
less of an overrun than previous years? Because I remember,
Well, you
It's
gotta remember, we
much
had
less than
4
what we-
months of not paying an individual too.
Yeah, it was
So had
much
that-
less than it could have been at the end of the year, let's put it that way.
You probably would have been looking at 120% of budget had corporate not made
the way it
that
was
decision.
in the past, because
The way it
this
was
is the item used to overrun quite a bit.
Yeah, it's because in the past, we had not, both the board and CVFRS didn't realistically look at the number of volunteers that were there, the fact that you lose one volunteer, now you're adding $20,000 to your payroll budget. This was the first budget that actually budgeted for
reasonable
the
overtime,
reasonable
like
number of people.
holidays.
This one didn't,
that are
I don't even
added.
think this one had the reasonable overtime in it. It
Well,
did,
Didn't your per diem cost you more?
yes.
Didn't you have, I'm not sure what your status is, do you have full-time EMTs now? Or are they mostly EMTs, or are they
The
combination?
two full-time employees are
EMTs.
paramedic and one's
Oh.
actually an EMTA.
No.
So that saves you money in the long haul, doesn't it?
So, don't confuse, because that's under the fire
That's still
budget.
buried there.
So,
in that.
yes. In Q1, 2, and 3 of this year, we had 2 full-time rescue
Paramedics.
paramedics.
One
As of
acting as
April,
chief.
there is 1 full-time rescue employee. The rest are per diems and volunteers.
And one of the things that we're striving to do is to fill those paramedic slots in this upcoming year, as we've done just in recent months, with per diems, which have far less benefit cost, et cetera. Okay?
So a per diem, end of the day, is less expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. If you look at line item 53201, patient billing service fee, we're slightly over there. Understand that Patrice has gone through all the steps to change our patient billing service. It's going to be, it starts right out with a smaller fraction of the revenue for ambulances, meaning you start automatically with an advantage to the town, basically, in terms of expenses in that line item. So
So we changed providers effective July 1st. So we had a clean break with our prior provider at the end of the fiscal year. The new service that we're using is out of Wisconsin. The difference to the town is it actually saves us 3% of patient billing revenue. So it used to be $100,000, 8% of that used to go to Newport Ambulance. Now we're only going to pay 5% of that revenue stream to ECP.
So we're chipping away at it. That's the bottom line.
Okay.
And then lastly, you look at the final page. The only comment here is just note that with the excess income, the income over projection, and bringing the expenses in very close to the original budget, we actually have a surplus of about $19,000 for the year.
Now, I will note that that surplus is preliminary. There is still a rather large bill that there is an accrual reflected in the numbers that you're looking at, which is our dispatching fee. that gets billed quarterly.
What fee is it?
Dispatching.
They still haven't gotten that out
We
yet.
still haven't received that from Shelburne. I've made 2 phone calls to them, so I made my best guess in backing into that. So that number may go up or down depending upon what the actual invoice from Shelburne is for dispatching fees.
What's it, I know people are always talking about cost of services and so forth, and I'm curious what we pay Shelburne for dispatching for, on an annual basis. What's
Not
the,
much. I was
Well,
very
that line
surprised.
item right there is you'd have to actually add 2 of them together, Dean.
show me which, where are we?
So, line item 52307,
52307.
which is dispatching fire, so that's just over $5,000. And again, that is
Oh, there it is,
an
yeah.
estimated number because we don't have Q4 actuals yet.
Yeah.
And the same thing, the
So
53307,
Add
add that to
8,000.
that.
Add 8,000 to it. So it's like
So
13 grand.
13,000. And that number isn't fixed. What is fixed is the rate that they charge per time that we are toned out. So that's like 33.64 every time. So the busier we are and the more times we go out the door, we pay Shelburne more.
Plus the next thing.
So
they
the
also-
budget is about 11,000, a little more.
Plus they also charge us for burn
Budget.
permits as they issue them, and
Yes, budget was, correct.
Budget.
Yeah.
And so, okay, now that I've understood that, so how much you think you're getting, what bill do they owe you? How much, so you paid actuals?
Well, within that actual is an estimate for
Oh,
what
you've
Q4 is
included-
going to be. It's included in that number.
Well,
So
you're not-
depending upon what the departure from my estimate is, whether or not it's higher or lower than what I estimated will change our overall expenses and the surplus
You're not
itself.
gonna be off more than 10%,
no.
I don't think so.
which would be 1,000 plus
Yeah.
or minus.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so 19,000.
Right? So the other thing as we're looking at this is, one of the reasons why this is preliminary, we're also going to have that conversation about the preliminary surplus calculation. Some of the items that you will see here, and I will point you to, so we're sort of segueing right into the other line item, is line items 51,500, 52,500, and 53,500. You notice those are all labeled capital acquisitions. There's nothing in corporate because.
So where do I find those that you're looking?
So on page 2 under fire, it's the line just before the subtotal for fire, 52,500.
Yep,
It
see
says
it,
capital
yep,
acquisitions,
Yep.
11,190.
Yep.
Those are items that I believe, and the chief believes, the auditor is going to capitalize. Those are items that have a length in excess of 3 years, definitely have a dollar value.
Lifespan,
The
right.
lifespan is that which could be capitalized, and the dollar value is in excess
So
of.
the point that you're making is that $11,000 would come out.
It will come
of
out
the
then,
expense.
Right, and then when you see our final post-audit, I will be making an adjustment to put those back in because we did expense them during the year, and the auditor will capitalize them, but in order to give you a true reflection of cash that was used from town appropriation, that's probably one of the numbers you will see, as
Yep.
well as under the 53,500, which is on the last
I
page,
got that one.
for the 460392.
Yep.
That is, those are items that we've identified either initially when the item was purchased or just after the end of the fiscal year when I went through all the transactions of items that
So in
the
your-
auditor will also capitalize.
So when you write up of how to do the math, those are the numbers that will come out by the auditor and you'll put back in
Correct.
for the math. Because the math, I saw I don't know if you have in your packet, the math is pretty straightforward on the.
It is.
Oh, here it
And,
is.
You know, as far as the source documents, Lane, we could, you know, because you're so accustomed to seeing the budget versus actual,
Yeah.
that's why I included that as the source document. The income statement or the profit and loss statement, which are one and the same document depending upon which accounting platform you use. This is what you're accustomed to seeing, and it shows you what we've actually spent versus what we've budgeted. But on the surplus calculation, we can certainly change that source document so that it could be the budget versus actual, or it could be the profit and loss statement.
Could be anything you
Both
want.
of them will show you the same
Figures.
numbers. What the profit and loss statement doesn't show you is what the budget amount was.
Okay.
Okay? So if you go through the original document that we just reviewed, and then look at the surplus calculation, line 1, and I laid this out.
Well, it came right out of the document you gave us, number
So
for number.
what I tried to do is set this up just like we do our income taxes.
Yeah,
Line 1, line 2, line
Yeah,
3,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you see it that way. So line 1 is the operating revenue.
yeah,
It's the input from the source document. So you notice that 753, 647,
yes, I saw that.
okay? That is on the first page where it says gross profit.
Yeah,
So if you want to circle that, that is our total income. So that's your starting place. What was your revenue stream? What
Yep.
was your income?
I saw that.
So adjustments to revenue, that would be revenue that was in transit, that was received in July or August, that the auditor may choose to pull in,
To be determined.
to be determined, right? So you add those two items together and you get your net revenue.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward. Skip down to your expenses, the 734, 288.81
Yep.
is the bottom on page 3 of 3 of the document we've been looking at.
Yep.
Total expenses. You notice that's the same number, okay? The adjustments to expenses, because this is the preliminary, all of those items that will probably be capitalized are still contained in the operating expense line item, but if the auditor chooses to capitalize all or some of those, that adjusting entry will end up in line 5. Then we'll add those two together and still end up with something close to that 734, depending upon the outcome of that Shelburne estimated dispatch bill. So now you take your line 3, less your line 6, basic math, and you come up with a number. It's either going to be a surplus, as it is this year, or if it's a negative number, that meant we deficit spent, and that makes the rest of the equation easy. The MOA reserve balance, so this is what the balance was as of the prior fiscal year. There was a document that I sent over into the Dropbox and should be in your packet. It looks like this.
Oh, what is that?
So this shows you, after the audit is over, and we've determined what the surplus or deficit was, there's a net change to the balance sheet line item, which is account 53,000, which is the MOA, the operating reserve fund MOA. So there's a specific line item on our balance sheet that identifies this is the running balance. This is the year-to-year activity. So you'll notice the first year that we had the MOA, the balance when we did the calculation was 47,588.30.
Yep.
The next year shows the net change in that,
Oh, right.
okay?
Down.
And so forth and so on. And when you get to the bottom, at the end of last fiscal year, meaning fiscal year 2017, so that would have been June 30, 2017,
Yeah.
the balance after the audit was 26,822. So that's our starting point for this year as far as the calculation on.
Which is the same number on your line 8.
Exactly.
And then you have the averages.
And then your net change is line 7 from above. And
Which is
then,
the surplus this year,
right,
yeah.
and then you add those two line items together, and you end up with what should the MOA reserve balance be at the end of this year. Now, we're not done with the calculation, obviously, because that just tells you last year's balance plus this year's deficit or surplus gives you the 46. Now you have to do a logic statement against, is that more than or less than the 10% of the 3-year average of the appropriation, and that's the chart below. So in order for us to have our initial base, we had to go back to our appropriation from 2012. So the appropriation schedule is your left-hand column, The 3-year average is obviously that year and the 2 prior, and then the 10% of that 3-year average is your right-hand column. So for this year that just ended, the target would be,
60.
it can't be more than 57,538. So 46,188 is less than that, so the amount due to the town would be 0.
So what's the, you have the 2019 here. How do you know
Right,
that?
because we already know what
2
the
years prior.
appropriation is, and we
Okay.
have the 2 years prior. So when I populated
Okay.
that report, I automatically put it in because we already know what that is.
So our auditor's gonna be here in a week or 10 days, so I think we're gonna just show your calculations
Yep.
and hopefully the words in the MOA will match. So we can, you know, as you said, we met a month ago, whatever it was, kind of simplify the words, have our auditor look at it,
Right.
make sure Mary's comfortable with it.
And I did have conversation with Rick and sent him over some
Oh, did you?
documents as well. So I think he's clearer now about how CBFRS operates and that we do have things other than an operating account.
Wonder who's gonna write the words?
Actually, I gave you some verbiage.
Yeah.
This, you're referring to this?
The MOA.
Plus
How you do
the
this? It's gonna be an
framework.
attachment, I think, with the
Yeah,
words.
Dean had asked me to clean up, there you go.
It said step 1 to whatever.
Yeah, so then,
Yeah.
that's what I would share with Rick, as well as the worksheet itself and the source documents.
So we probably won't get back to that then for a bit, is that right, Dean?
Right, he'll be here at the end of the month, and, you know, maybe, depending upon the agendas for the next few meetings, but maybe, you know, at some point in September, probably.
Probably early September, we're gonna get back to the, so you've given us this, that's good. So we're gonna get back to the MOA.
Yeah, well, the hope is the town
Oh,
will
that's right, you're
have
having an
a-
operation.
Yeah, 27.
So
Not looking forward.
how many weeks are you gonna be out?
I don't know. It's like they don't, everybody's different, so I can't really predict it, but I think conceivably 2 weeks without, you know.
So when you're back, three of you,
And you could probably go along without me, but
we would wanna we would wanna schedule or to continue discussion on the MOA.
well, that'll be my incentive to get better.
Okay, that'll be fun, huh? Okay.
One of the incentives to get better, for sure.
Okay, so this is for tonight, the first cut at the annual report, or your annual position. Does anybody have any questions on what's been said? I mean, it looks good.
I mean, we benefited from the fact that I can't actually quantify it, or qualify it, I should say. But the change in our billing provider,
Yep,
our Q4 revenue stream, as far as patient billing, increased. Whether or not there's a direct relationship to when we gave them their 60-day notice.
this is
And,
Newport.
yeah, and that
Oh, there
revenue
is-
stream picking up, because that way we get
They push their
paid for
billings.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, they definitely were on top of the billing, so that was stronger. And the 10,750 in program services billing. So if those hazmat calls hadn't happened, you take that out, we'd be looking at, just around $9,000 in surplus instead.
Now, I thought most people used this Newport billing services. Are other people doing what you're doing, or
I don't know how many people actually use
or
Newport.
fire and rescues?
Right.
I think a lot of
No,
local
it's some of
ones
them
do,
use
but-
smaller, it depends upon how involved you want to be in the billing cycle. So you either pay a service provider or you do it in-house and you're paying somebody to do it in-house. So for us, when we've looked at it, for what we have been paying it's cheaper to outsource that.
Yeah, there's a
than
lot
have
of
somebody-
rules and
Right,
requirements
there's
to
an
do it
awful lot of
in-house
rules.
to get
Most
paid.
places, even like Essex, uses an outside service. They don't use Newport. Newport bills for themselves. They bill for Johnson, but those all tend to be underneath Newport's scheduling system anyways. We were just an additional profit center for them.
So these bylaws, these are new bylaws.
Yeah, that's not the final copy. I think we had a
There were some
couple of
typos.
typos that are getting cleaned up right now, but we'll furnish you with a final when it's available.
Yeah, on the last page, it says page
Yeah.
2 of 11.
And who does the bylaws?
Um,
How does this work?
The bylaws work, they're put forth to the members of the department. The members elect the board appoints the officers. If the members don't like what's going on, they can elect a different board. The members approve the bylaws.
How
So
often do you do the bylaws?
they are as needed. There have been changes routinely over the years, but this was, again, a significant change because of the merging of the fire and the rescue leadership that now we need to reflect.
So every year, the board gets elected, so there's a nominating committee that goes out and solicits volunteer members to see if they're interested in serving on the board. Then a slate of candidates is put in front of all the members that are eligible to vote. That means that you're a member in good standing.
All of
And
that is in the bylaws. You can.
They actually vote that, so the slate of candidates was presented at the annual meeting last Wednesday. The new board, which is actually the same people in the same slots, was elected, and then the total membership reviewed line by line the revised bylaws, and it was a unanimous decision to move forward.
And these are in line with the MOA? Like with the dissolution of the organization, with the property, equipment, and all that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Couple of questions, different topic.
Sure.
So the pumper, so it's a couple months late? What's that do to you?
Is
At
running late.
$100 a day.
Huh?
At $100 a day.
I know, $100 a day, that,
Basically, them being late has paid for the Insta chains on the truck instead of us having to find another income source. We're not done yet because they are delivering Wednesday. When they deliver Wednesday, the clock stops until we complete our final inspection. If we find major issues that prevent the truck from being in service, which I highly doubt, because they are going over and above right now, making sure they are not, then the clock would start again. If there's a couple minor things, it does not start again. Then we work out the $100 a day, any changes we made, and
why are you assuming the $100 a day goes right to you guys? The taxpayers,
It goes to the town.
huh? The taxpayers authorized up to,
and the truck is not in service yet, which the balance of that money was intended for fittings, hose, whatever we needed to put that truck in
that might
service.
be debatable a little bit, I'm not sure. We'll discuss that.
Well, we'll have a pretty bare pumper over there otherwise.
No, I'm not saying it's not gonna be done, I'm saying you're assuming you're gonna reap the benefits of them being 2 months late.
Well,
It's to be discussed, I think. I mean, I don't
well,
have an answer.
My view of that is the town appropriated a dollar amount to get this truck into service.
I thought we paid for the pumper.
An equipped
You're-
pumper.
You're changing the words from the article, aren't you?
Well, we're gonna have a pretty bare pumper over there then if
But
we're
I
not
mean, that
buying
has to be in
equipment
your,
for it.
didn't that have to be in your plan? So where is it?
It was it previous year?
Huh?
It was the previous year, wasn't it?
Oh, is it the previous year?
Yep.
I don't have it here. I thought we paid up to whatever the number
It was
was.
approved up to $620,000.
620,000.
Right, and I think the contract for building the piece of apparatus came in at $599. So there's still that,
So what was the?
you wouldn't bond for fitting it. You
Right,
bonded for the pumper itself.
Right.
But the difference between the $599 and what the voters approved is the dollars, I think, that Dick is referring to actually outfit the rig so that it's.
But you thought you were gonna pay, okay, it says, town shall bond not to exceed $625,000 to be issued to finance purchase of a new fire pump truck and related equipment
So he's talking about.
to
related
replace
equipment.
the 1980 fire pumper truck.
So the truck is what was bonded, was the $599 and change,
Yeah,
and that additional, I'll call it 25,000, is to outfit the truck, which is exactly what the wording says.
Because I could very well call the company and tell them to do all the mounting, buy all the mounting fittings that we intend to do here to save money. When you have the apparatus manufacturers mount all your equipment on the truck, you talk about $1,000 a foot usually. We intend to do that in-house, and that's where the other 25, whatever.
$1,000 a foot translates to what?
Would translate to just mounting the equipment, not purchasing it. It would translate to probably into $16,000 on that particular
Is that what
truck.
you're getting at, Lane, or were you getting at the $100 a day?
what I was getting at is I thought we purchased a truck, pumper, for under $625,000. So now the company that's building the truck is penalized $100 a day for being late. So 60 days is $6,000. So the price of the pumper is $6,000 less than this $599 that they negotiated. So that what I'm asking is, who reaps the benefit of that penalty that comes back to the town? That's my question.
Well, the check is written to the town, because the town
There
still
won't be a
owns
check
it.
to the town. It'll be the town still owes money on this truck.
Well, we
And
would
I
reduce,
reduce the payment
okay,
to.
but still
this
comes
payment.
up to who benefits from the penalty.
Either way, the taxpayers or Schlott benefit from the penalty, because either you take it back and I have to find another source to pay for the tire chains, the things like that, the nozzles, the fittings, the things like that, or
Okay.
we take it out of the 625, which we had intended to originally, and
Okay.
which pays to be a shrewd negotiator and fight to keep this $100 a day in there, which I actually had to fight with them to keep it there. But,
Okay, so,
so,
let's see how that triggers off.
well, I'm sure I'll be hearing about it again, but it's $625 for a pumper truck and related equipment, and that's
Okay,
what I
Well,
So
see.
the $599 bought the truck.
yeah.
Now, it's the
Yeah,
related
but the penalty is
equipment.
unrelated to anything.
Correct. I don't disagree with you.
I look at the penalty at the same as when I go to a supplier and negotiate and get you a better price on hoses and nozzles and things like that, which I do very religiously, to save us money in the community, to get the equipment we need, so.
I don't disagree. The only thing I think is that maybe the penalty that's being provided, that would be provided for this, I think should go into something, and it would have to be put somewhere in the fund to, I would say, to go towards the next budget.
Actually, it should go right back into that reserve fund.
If it goes anywhere, it would need to go to the
So that you don't actually
capital
ask
fund.
more this November,
Well,
next March.
Basically,
To
that's what I'm
refund
saying,
that,
it should
yeah.
be going back
Something,
into
I
the
just-
budget some way in order to reduce the town's appropriation next year.
And my other question, I understand you guys won a grant, what was that for?
We have actually won a grant, which I was going to bring up before you started hammering me on the other one, for approximately $60,000 to replace our aging air compressor and breathing air fill system in the station. The balance of the installation costs and the matching percentage of the grant, Schlott Fire and Rescue members had voted to take out of other funds, so this will cost the town nothing.
Nothing.
So
Oh,
we will be
congratulations.
updating a 2004 compressor. We will be selling that compressor, putting the money towards the update of the new one. and the rest will be taken out of other funds.
It's particularly satisfying because there were no professional grant writers involved whatsoever. Rob Mullen, Patrice, I had a tiny little role in it. Dick, helped on it, but it was organically written, and for the first time in 4 years, we got, an affirmative, so it was satisfying.
It's a lot of money. That's,
Yeah.
congratulations and good job. Good. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks for
Any other
coming.
questions?
No, you've got them all. Good summary on the income expenses. It's, for some reason, maybe years go by, it's simpler to follow all this.
Okay, guys, have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Good luck on your surgery.
So this is going to be interesting how we handle
Yeah, I'll
that.
see you before then.
Okay.
So you would take that as the penalty money and put it in a reserve fund then? Oh, the reserve fund that we have,
Yeah,
the capital reserve fund.
just put it back in there so that it doesn't.
I think that's a,
So it can be appropriate.
I think that's a
The
good-
appropriation for next year would be lower.
yeah, I think it's a good idea. Okay, you're okay with all that?
That way they don't feel like they lose it.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't try it. All of a sudden it's their money, I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric and Elizabeth Buttery, is that who is here? Yes. Yeah, come on in the front row, you can be on the microphone, you'll be on television, all those things. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
So, who would like to explain, who knows, you know most about this, Frank?
Not that I know the most of it. I know that they originally had we approved a road cut,
Yep.
and now the road cut has been moved a little bit to the east from the original road cut.
We kind
And
of
now is that totally on the lot where the mobile home was?
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's a main reason why we wanted to move it,
Yep.
is not to have an easement.
That's
Have it all
what I
on our-
figured.
Does the other access, I don't know who's writing it, scribbled the other access,
The
does
mobile-
that mean that goes away?
I think you'll find
Yes.
that the reasoning
If that's
for,
okay.
right, the
Yeah,
reasoning.
that's good.
Yeah.
So all you do is you just, eliminate the other access and just move this one 50 feet.
Well,
That's correct.
right, and
I'm
that's,
sorry, I missed what you were
and that's
saying.
gonna be the reasoning for a name of the road. Is
Right.
because once it goes to 3 lots, it has to be a named road.
Right, right.
And just for the purpose of the minutes, the access that's going away is to the east of the proposed access, and it's the access that did serve as a driveway for the mobile home. Just,
Right.
so this one here is going away.
Yes.
North is that way.
So I'm gonna make a motion, can I do that?
Sure.
To give them to shift, it's for Eric and Elizabeth Buttery, for the highway access permit to shift to the private right-of-way of 1824 Hinesburg Road, approximately 50 feet to the east.
To replace access permit? Is this basically a replacement or just an adjustment?
It's a replacement,
So if this is a new application,
right?
so your motion should include the HAP number at the top of the,
Okay. Oops.
HEP 18 on that.
Yep, HAP 18-09. Anything else?
good question.
Is it in the notes? I have to
It's not,
I think it-
what's your question?
Which one is it replacing?
I think it's in the notes.
Is it in the notes?
11,
Yeah,
1711. Replacing 1711.
HAP 1711.
And Junior has recommended a culvert 15 inches diameter by 30 feet long.
But by the motion, has it been, is that be part of the motion, or? Or is
I'll
that,
make it that way.
okay,
Yeah.
make it part of the motion?
Yeah, sure.
And I'll second that, so we can still discuss.
So do we need to say anything about the elimination of the,
You should.
so that can just be in the write-up then?
Within the motion,
Should be in the motion.
replacing,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I was,
Okay.
that we're replacing AP 1711.
Well, the driveway, I think, is what Lane was asking about, the driveway that was served.
Oh, and it eliminates the driveway, the existing driveway at 18, what was the address of the?
24.
It is
1824
1824, yeah.
Hinesburg Road.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all included in the motion then? You agree with that?
So it eliminates that, it eliminates 1824, so there'll be a new number?
It'll be your private road
It'll be
name.
on the private road.
Oh, there won't be a number?
If there's, well, it'll be a number of whatever.
It'll be,
It'll be a number on your private road, and they're usually done by distance now,
Right, yeah.
911 distance.
Okay.
So that would probably be somewhere around, depending on the side, it'd probably be somewhere around like 27 or 20 or 31. It'd be an odd number,
Okay.
usually on the left, and then it's an even number on the right. And they get bigger as they go in. So the other two places might
So
be.
1824, that is long standard
Yeah.
with all of you folks.
and it's gonna change to a named road, which is our next item.
So if we name a road, it'll be 27 or something to that effect, whatever the name of the road is, instead of Hinesburg Road.
1824.
Any other questions on, what'd you say that Junior wants a,
Culvert, 15 inches by 30 feet.
okay? That's agreed?
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And I've changed the name, or have a different.
Create a name.
The 1824 was actually, when I called to turn off all the power and everything, it came up as the solar address.
Huh.
Yeah, it was the solar people, across the,
Well, it was all owned by the same person.
Right.
So,
yeah, even the telephone,
right,
because I couldn't turn it off. I had to call Clark back and say,
Right.
the solar people.
right.
Huh.
Yeah,
It was all part of the same farm, so who knows?
making use of the mobile
So-
home.
It says somebody's proposing Maples Way.
That
Is
was the original proposal. We had a couple back and forths, and the
I had to go draw my dogs.
proposed name now, because that's too similar to Maple Knoll. So the accepted proposed name is Cayman's Way,
Cayman's Way.
Cayman''s.
We have
It was in an email, because the original was on the agenda, Maple's Way.
I was just wondering if we had a copy of the form that.
I do have the form.
So who reviews names then? Is that
The
acceptable?
911 coordinator and Mary.
And she's accepted?
It was Mary and the 911 coordinator, which is Aaron.
Okay, so Cayman's Way is an acceptable, doesn't conflict with any other names in town?
Mary, the email that I got said Mary agreed with it,
Okay.
and she was happy with it.
Oh, we have to sign this thing.
We're creating a road, we have to change our roads, what is it?
I was surprised
Ordinance?
that Maples, that's our dog's name, one of them. When I thought about it, I was like, there's no way Maple, it's Vermont, Maple must be everywhere. But it really wasn't. It was just that it was one little word conflict, that Maple's Knoll.
Right.
Yeah. So I was quite amazed. And then we went with Forest. This was a back and forth thing for 20 minutes. And then there was another, we couldn't use Forest.
Lost Forest.
Want to make a motion?
And then Liz suggested my last name, and I was like, no way, Buttery? No.
Buttery Circle or
Buttery
something.
Lane, yeah.
I don't think it sounds
Buttery
awful.
Lane.
I was just trying to think right now, like Cayman, if somebody said I'm calling 911, I'm on Cayman's Way.
Cayman's Way, it's pretty.
It can work. Buttery Circle would probably stick in my head better.
Right. Well, we can call it.
Okay, we can go, all right.
So if you're all set with it, then I'll make a motion to make an amendment to the ordinance regarding street naming and addressing to create Cayman's Way off from Hinesburg Road,
Second.
To be signed by the select board.
to be signed by the select board.
You
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? So you guys good for that for a long time into the future?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is this an original we should just sign while we're
Yep.
sitting here? Okay, you've got new access, new road name.
Get to work.
Who puts the sign up, Junior?
Junior orders a sign, he can put it up, but it would be yours to pay for. If you want him to do it, he can do it, or if you want another contractor to do it.
Is this a town road or a private road?
It's a private road.
Private road, okay. But because of 9/11,
Right, has to be named. Yep.
Because of the 3 residences, or 3 lots
Right.
that are accessed by
Okay.
this road.
So we've approved this, right?
Yep.
And it's funny, ever since the name thing came up, I've been riding my bike around everywhere, and I see all these cool names. You know that, and it says PVT, so I assume that's the private.
Yep.
They've chose their names and everything. I love Cayman, but it's really not I just exhausted my list. I had no other, I was just,
Shout out.
I thought about my mom,
Shout out
Dolores
Oregon was
Way.
already
I was
there.
like,
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming in. and
thank you.
Enjoy your
so
new
much.
site, home, whatever.
Thank you.
Is that a pen? Okay.
We'll get it cleaned up soon. That road, the old syrup road there,
Yeah, it looks pretty muddy going
Yes.
out through there.
it's, yeah.
Here you go, Dean.
Yeah, it was looking pretty bad. Looks like it's kind of fun.
It should be interesting engineering feat, this
It's
driveway.
gonna rain. It's gonna rain tonight, tomorrow, so that'll be really fun tomorrow.
Yeah,
Do you have a big tractor to get out there?
Yeah. I'm interested to see how it all, the engineering of that, because it's a long driveway across quite a brutal little section of moisture coming up.
Yep. It'll all be done.
Yeah, right. All
It'll all
right.
be done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
everybody, again. Good seeing everybody.
Yep, thanks. Melody Danaher,
That would be me.
you're on
I'm
center.
familiar to the vote.
Oh, yeah.
I'm proposing that Charlotte allow us to turn Charlotte Teal again this fall for the month of September. I hope you've all been happy with our decor and with the fact that we come around and take them down.
Everybody
on
gets
time.
advertising. Kelly Brush does, and you do, and
So,
they're all about the same time.
we are hoping that we can get some folks to put up these posters this year along the main thoroughfare there, just so everyone gets a little more familiar with why we're doing this. And just a personal aside, one of our volunteers who helped us hang bows in Richmond 2 years ago was diagnosed after hanging the bows and reading the symptoms. She went to the doctors, and now she's 2 years into it, and it's a miserable, miserable thing. So we appreciate you letting us do this in Charlotte. We really need education and information to get out there.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Let me give you one of our.
We left,
presentation.
Thanks.
We left your bows, or I took some of the bows down in East Charlotte, and then I used them for the tractor parade.
Yes.
It's
And do you
beautiful.
want to leave them again this year?
I would
or
love
do you want
to,
me
sure.
take them? Okay, I'll leave them then. I enjoyed the tractor parade too, by the way.
Okay, thank you. It was a very nice little addition. Maybe we'll put this down at the luncheon or something. We'll put it somewhere different
Yeah,
to educate people.
that would be nice.
And did we have a poster before that?
We have. It's the
Okay,
same
'cause-
poster each year, but, I've given it to the Ferry store, and the Charlotte Senior Center puts it up for us, and the Children's Center. So, some do. It's, we ask everywhere along the route
Well, I think
that's
it's a
open
good
when we're
idea
doing
that
it.
You should you can bring one to the store. Because I did have one time, and I remember we really did
Yeah.
discuss this, and each year, it's more and more discussion,
Yeah,
only because
Good.
people are getting used to the teal bows, and,
yeah,
you know, everybody knows what pink bows.
yeah, and there's more and more, unfortunately, more and more of the people being diagnosed, women being diagnosed, and people talk more openly about all of these types of conditions than we used to. It was very
Yes.
hush-hush
Yes.
in our generation.
Yes.
Nowadays, right out there. So that's good. It's all
That
good.
happened at the store too. It was just like, you know, just,
So would you like to make a motion, Carrie?
to accept, liking that, Melody's gonna turn the town, teal for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month to hang teal color bows in the Ferry Road area and in the East Charlotte area.
Is that
I'll second that.
second? Any other conversation, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering this. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Melody.
I'm gonna get a drink of water.
Okay. So the next item, spam filter service,
Right.
is that, we're going to discuss on this piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay. Taking a 2-minute break? Yeah. Start up.
Right
Purchase of spam filter service,
Right, so, as you know, we have changed over to Tech Group that's managing our network and providing computer IT support.
And how's that going?
So far, it seems to be good. I mean, it's only since August 1st, but so far so good. We realized as we were transferring over that SimQuest had provided a service, a spam filtering service, and that will end, actually their contract ends the end of August. So that will end at the end of August. So to replace that, Tech Group provided 3 quotes for 3 different services, kind of high, low, medium. At the high end is $3,000 a year. The low service is $308 a year. And in between is a service that is actually one that they provide, and that is $540 a year. They, you know, maybe self-serving, but they don't recommend the lowest cost one. They said that they have very few customers on that, and you know, I guess in good conscience, they don't recommend it, but I did ask for 3 quotes and they provided it.
So the 540 one is the one that makes sense.
Right.
How many
Or to me.
email boxes do we have? Or
I think he said up to 25.
That's what this says, but I'm just wondering how many.
Oh, how many do we have?
Do we have?
We have all employees. I think we do have emails for various town officials, such as select board members, and past select board members carry on for a bit, and past employees carry on for a bit. So I believe we're under 25 because that's what he quoted was 25 or less.
So if it's more than 25, we're gonna have to
Bump it up.
eliminate some of the
Yeah,
past
yeah,
employees,
yes.
sort of thing.
Right. Yep.
we could probably manage that to stay under the 25.
That's why I'm just, as long as we can manage it to stay under the 25, but
Right.
I'm fine with that.
So somebody want to make a motion to approve the Tech Group managed service for $540 a year?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the Tech Group managed email security spam filter for the $540 a year on quote number, looks like 0TGQ6849.
0.
TGQ6849.
Seconded?
Yes.
Any discussion, any more comments, Dean?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. Okay, the Ballek and Echeverria appeal,
Close enough.
3-lot subdivision.
Yep.
You want to kind of brief us on that a little bit?
So the planning commission approved this 3-lot subdivision. It's at the corner of State Park Road and Mount Philo Road. There were conditions that they imposed as part of the approval, and the applicant appealed. I've heard that they might withdraw the appeal, but at this point, we haven't received anything in writing. So the step for the town would be to authorize the town. The town has a certain number of days after the appeal is submitted to enter an appearance and say, you know, if you want to defend the planning commission's position or just participate in any
When
regard.
does that time frame end?
It's pretty close, actually. I think it's,
August 16th, it says in your notes.
okay, yeah.
So I assume it's appropriate to do that. I mean,
Yeah, and it takes, you know, probably 5 minutes for the attorney to do it. It's not a big deal. They just send a notice to the court.
I mean, on the most part, we always usually want to make an appearance.
Yep.
And which members are going to represent the select board? That also, we have to do that.
I don't know. We could always choose who is going to participate later.
Yeah.
So right now, it's just an
Right
appearance.
now, it's just to make an appearance.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that's the time, that's what's under the time restraint right now, is whether the town makes an appearance or not who is going to participate in any kind of mediation or agreement or anything.
Can you make a motion?
Yeah, we'll make a motion to make an appearance in the Ballek and Echeverria appeal.
Authorize the town attorney to make it?
Authorize the town attorney to make an appearance.
Yep.
In the appeal of the planning commission decision of the 3-lot subdivision.
Is that seconded?
Second.
The spelling of that name is in the agenda. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You want to talk about the budget
Sure.
budget review process?
I think it was last year, we started earlier. Well, first of all, for a few years, Selectboard has held a meeting with the committees and, various officials and organizations that participate in the budget process. And I think primarily the discussion that we've had has been around the budgeting process and trying to start from zero and prove every line item and every expense. And then also there was discussion about the open meeting law and the requirement for posting notices and taking minutes. So we've done that for 2 years, I believe, and I think it's been good. I think people enjoyed it, participated. I guess it seemed like it may not be needed, at least for those topics, to happen this year, but I wanted to just ask you if you wanted it to happen, or if you have other topics that you want, you know, if you wanted to meet with boards and committees prior to the.
Do we know of any committees that really aren't following the open meeting laws? Or that should be following and,
You know, the way we do,
I mean, I don't want
Agendas and
to
minutes.
put any of them on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
well,
that.
to be honest, we don't know what they post because the agendas don't get posted through us, and the minutes don't come through us.
Right, and they don't need to come through us. They just
Right.
have to follow the meeting laws, which means they have to post them.
Right. I do receive emails occasionally from the Trails Committee and the Energy Committee to ask to post agendas here, you know, as part of the posting process. So I believe that seem to be following it. Yeah.
I think another way to look at it is, I was looking at the committee changes we've made. I don't think we have any major chair changes. You know, that's where the budgeting comes from.
Right.
Part of the
Conservation.
reason why we had that meeting, not that we have to, but we had it, Frank, so that everybody could have an evening together, you know, where there's
Well, you get to
a
meet them.
couple of.
You get to meet them because you don't usually see these other
Right,
boards.
exactly. Everybody went around and introduced themselves and what committee they were on, and we had a little food. And, you know, it seems like we could come up with a subject. I don't have one right this minute,
Yeah.
other than I just think it's good policy or good, you know, team building to, you know, maybe we discuss the town plan. I don't know. I'd have to have somebody give me a few ideas, a few suggestions, and I'd know.
Right. Now, last year, we did a kind of a round robin thing
That's what I'm talking
and,
about.
and met, we kind of met some of the people that we didn't meet before because, I mean, I did because I wasn't here when they were appointed, so there were committee members on different committees that I didn't even know they were on committees. And sometimes I just show up at their meetings and they're kind of like surprised. Oh, I stopped in at the cemetery commission meeting one night. And I was here too, actually, when Krasnow was doing their plan. And so I went to one of those meetings, and then I ended up going in the back room, because I heard some noise back there, and met up with our two cemetery commissioners, trying to find different cemeteries around town, and discuss some of their ideas of what they're planning on doing.
So the other thing is the schedule of meetings. Bless you. The schedule of meetings with individual committees, and I think we started doing that a little bit earlier last year. I think, Carrie, that was your suggestion, and I think it worked out pretty well. I know, I guess I've heard that there's a suggestion that it doesn't need to start this early. It's fine with me whenever you want to start it. I do think, in the past, I mean, since for the past 15 years or so, I usually provide the first quarter of actual expenses and revenues to the boards. And I have to say, it's probably not that useful to provide those numbers. 1 quarter in, it doesn't indicate how you're going to end the year, or even, it's not very useful.
Well, there's not enough information.
Right.
It's not very accurate.
Exactly.
So
But-
our
but I'm wondering-
get-together.
But I'm wondering if the reason why Carrie was doing this, part of it was not just for budget, but maybe just for, maybe a committee update of what they're doing
Yeah.
and how they're handling things on their committee.
Right.
and what their plans are.
Right, so provide,
That
15
really
minutes or
was
so.
part of it. It
Yeah.
really was so that everybody could hear it all at the same time.
Yeah. So I don't think it was as much a budget thing as it was kind of a committee update.
Oh, you mean the big meeting?
Even, yeah, the big meeting. Well, the big meeting was to meet everybody, but I mean,
Okay.
if we're gonna, if the committees
Okay.
came in every once in a while,
Okay,
whether it was, happens to be during budget time or not,
right,
so that we can talk to them, so when the Trails Committee comes in, when they're doing these proposals, we're not totally caught off guard, because we don't get all the emails, we don't go to all the meetings, so we're not caught up with what the Trails Committee is doing, and then when they do come in, they say, oh, we got this elaborate plan, we've been working on it for months, 6 months to a year, and we hear about it
right,
in the 11th hour,
yeah.
and we need a grant, we need this, we
Yeah.
need that,
And
or
that-
we're going to do this, or we're going to do that,
Right.
and we know nothing about it.
I mean, that's why I think it can make sense to start early and then, spend a chunk of time, 15 minutes or 20 minutes with each committee, so it's not just they're in and out and, here's the budget and they leave, but you can ask them questions and they can tell you what they're up to.
And you don't lead it, I thought sometimes when people left last year, they just expected that they were gonna get the dollar amount that they asked for. I wasn't looking for that kind of conversation as, for yay or nay right then. It was just an update.
Right.
But I could get that update myself
So let me ask you,
at that big meeting. I suppose.
so there's a couple of options.
What are they?
So the way I see it, what you're suggesting, invite everybody in. I would assume we'd want to do it late afternoon, or at 6 o'clock, or at 5:30.
What did we do last time? Like 6:30, I think, wasn't it? 'Cause
I think
we
so.
had- We had pizza.
I think there was a meet and greet first and then
Yeah.
a sit down, yeah.
Great.
So there's that, or have, like Dean has a draft, he handed it out here, like September 10th, 15 minutes for each committee, and so there are 5 committees he's got listed for this December 10th, and it's on this sheet too, and then we'd have 15 minutes with each of them in a more private atmosphere, just their committee. So which would you prefer? Everybody, or the 15 minutes within these ongoing meetings?
Well, let me just ask, these folks we would see again, you would just push it off a little bit more. So instead of, say you kept the same schedule, but instead it would be October 15th it started, or, where we only met once. Didn't all these people have to come back for a
twice.
second time?
I don't think they do. Usually you have the Charlotte Land Trust come back. It depends upon what they're proposing. If they're, if they have a project in the works or not, they may just come in once. And Charlotte Park, actually, they said they probably won't be ready by the 10th. The other boards did say they would be ready. Lewis Creek Association and Cemetery Commission would be ready by the 24th.
Would or wouldn't?
Would, yeah. Little League will be ready, Recreation. So it depends upon the complexity. I think CVFRS, usually you do see them twice because of the complexity of their budget and the size of it. Usually there's sort of a meeting to kind of look at the overall issues, what they forecast as far as expenses and revenues, and then a final meeting when they actually have the dollars and cents in there. It also, usually November, December can get kind of jam-packed, and, there may be an amendment to the land use regulations or something else that you have to have a hearing, and it's just as far as the ability to allow boards to come in, it gets a little bit compressed.
Are they working on the land use regulations?
I believe they are. Well, let's see, they're working on the energy section to the town plan. That's, I think, the big focus right now. There is a responsiveness summary for the land use regulations, but I don't think they've spent a lot of time on it, if any.
I was gonna say, I haven't heard much about.
Right, it's the town plan.
They had a kind of a list going on of
Right,
things.
that's the
for
responsiveness, right.
For the land use regulations,
Right.
but I knew that they were prioritizing the energy section of the town plan to try to
Exactly.
get it up to statutes.
Right, yep.
So, what's your desire?
Is this schedule like what it was last year?
It's pretty much, some of them change around a little bit. If someone knows they're gonna be away, I mean, I contacted just the boards for the first two meetings just to see even if this was possible. And for example, Bill Fraser Harris said he was gonna be away, so I moved recreation to the 24th. More or less, it's similar to last year's.
So the Lewis Creek Association, what budget are we looking at for them?
We make it's a line item, it's similar to a donation, except it also is, they work with the conservation commissions for some of their invasive management. And that's actually where some of their budget comes through the Conservation Commission.
And there's a difference between the Conservation Commission and the Conservation Fund.
Oh yeah, big difference. The Conservation Commission is the board, and their budget is like $1,000, and the Conservation Fund is what's used for conserving land.
It's up to you. What do you like, Frank? Got me.
I mean, the only thing I see is if you're looking at all of these, I don't know if you'd be able to fit all of these in a night, if you're gonna spend an extra 15, 20 minutes each to try to discuss on what they're doing and what their future plans are and stuff. I don't think you'd be able to do it all in one night.
No, here's the proposal. Is that what you mean, or, so this
Yeah.
proposal is September 10th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups come in, give them 15 minutes to talk. So you're talking to that group only. You're not talking to,
Right, but you're talking to that group, for your 20 minutes,
right?
for your budget review, and then
Right.
you're talking about finding out what's going on in their committee. So that means that item has gone from 7:30 to 7:40 from 7:30 to 8 o'clock.
Unless what they're doing is integrated as part of why they need the budget.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know if the time frame would actually work, but I mean, there's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if you want to spend more time with them and spread it out over more meetings, that would be another option. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
So instead of inviting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe this meeting we invite 3 or 4, give them more time.
Well, possibly. I mean, I think we'd still be able to see them all in that format. It just may run over.
In fact,
And they may not. Like you said, it depends on how active the committee is. I mean, if you're dealing with the cemetery commission, there may not be much going on. If you're dealing with the trails, you might end up spending an extra half an hour with them.
We couldn't talk about all of this at one big group meeting.
Not their budgets. We had I think it was basically just a meet and greet sort of thing that we did. We kind of did a round robin and did a meet and greet. Everybody introduced
And
themselves.
everybody could just give a little synopsis of what they do.
Right. But, I mean, yeah, I
And
mean,
how much
if
money they're thinking
if you
about
feel that
spending.
that will do it. I mean,
don't
I
know.
don't, you know, a simple meet and greet that, you know, one night, maybe before a meeting,
And then,
you know, for the first hour, if we meet at 6 instead of 7.
I don't know.
See, last year, I think we talked about open meeting regulations, minutes are required.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we had something to tell them, and then we wanted to say, you know, you should consider a bottoms-up review of your budget, which is hard for people to do, because I was looking at what they did last year. So that is sort of what we did with the meet and greet, kind of set some of the ground rules.
Well, that's true, but I mean, the zoning board doesn't do much with the budget. The planning commission, I don't think, does much with the budget.
Well, there's usually a meeting with the chairs and the,
Right, but I mean, usually most of the budget for that is through Daryl or Aaron. Usually they are the ones that present the budget for the planning and zoning.
usually the chairs have presented
Well,
it.
the chairs are there, but I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of expenses that, I mean, you know, odd expenses.
Right.
I mean, we have our minute taker and we have our mailings and stuff and our staff. I mean, other than that, there's not really a lot.
I want to see what Fritz and Matt might like to do. And I never.
Another suggestion, I was to take up what you've said, instead of having 5, let's kind of see what we think they're gonna do. The land trust will let us know if they have anything really active or not. It doesn't take long, but maybe we pick 3 instead of 5 and give them a little more time. Is that an option for you?
Yeah, it could be.
Because I'm kind of feeling that the message we all put out, the meet and greet is good, but I'm not sure we have a new message to put out, other than to hear what they want to do, but we're going to hear that when they come in and talk to us. Like trails, I think trails will be really interesting. That I'd give them a good half hour, because, you know, they've got a lot of plans and going to want more money, grants.
Well, that's kind
So
of
I'd
where
give
I
them
was,
a
that's kind of
stand-
where I was
I sort
going.
of give
Maybe
them
you
a
might change the order of who's coming depending on the amount of information that we might.
Right, make them for one of the earlier ones, because they may have some end-of-the-year grants or something. It'd be nice to know.
Right.
So is that acceptable to you? So I guess we're saying,
Yes, for the dates, and maybe we'll look into try to look into see which ones would be more,
yeah. And get an
that would take longer.
get an estimate of time, that, such as, I think trails would invite a lot of conversation. Whereas I'm not sure, the land trust is gonna take too much time as an example. See what they wanna do. Okay, so we're going to not do a meet and greet, and we'll stick to the schedule that Dean is proposing, but maybe not squeeze as many folks in.
Okay.
And it might take an extra meeting, you know, in the course of the fall.
Right.
Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you. Any select board updates? Did I miss anything? No. Any select board updates?
I'm gonna talk about the Grange for a minute. They are really going forward with monthly events, if not a couple monthly events. They plan to open up this winter as well. They just had an author who wrote a book about Mount Philo.
Oh, yeah, I heard
And
that
it
was
was a
good.
huge success. And they have slated some music, and there's potlucks and all kinds of things.
Ooh.
And so during that conversation, or at our last meeting at the Grange, they talked about a Google Calendar. Dean, are you familiar with a Google Calendar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more familiar with it. Either, I mean, you can have your individual calendar, or if you have a group, can probably have a calendar, like.
Yeah, well, that's what they were talking about. Heather was going to put a calendar together, so everything is on that calendar.
For the
in
Grange.
For the Grange. And she is able to invite people to
Share or see what's on the calendar.
to be part of that, yeah. And I know Fritz was talking about seeing, some of the town stuff as a whole on a calendar differently than the way we do it now. I didn't know if that was something we should look into. She's just now putting it together, so once it's done, I can ask her a little bit more about it, or I'd be able to look at it, but
Yeah.
Who's putting this together?
Heather Manning,
Putting together a
a
calendar?
Google
For the
calendar
For the
of
Grange.
events, and everyone, I believe, has to be invited.
Right.
So,
You have to.
I was thinking if
Right.
the town had one, a select board, let's say, and
Good question. At this time, we don't have Google Calendars, or we don't have Google Calendars because we don't have Google
Gmail.
emails.
Right.
So is that changing with Tech Group?
I think they were thinking, well, I don't know about thinking, but they have at least preliminarily recommended Windows 365, which is what a lot of towns and businesses and I think organizations have used. So I don't know if there's a calendar function with that that's similar to Google Calendars.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know if there's
when
a,
she gets one done, I'll just print it out and we can look at it and see if it's something that would be useful to us.
right, well, the way it would have to work is in order for, it could be made up somewhere else, but, I think it would have to be something, somebody in-house would have to have a Google account to be able to do a Google Calendar, and then they could invite everybody to it.
That might not work here, but
So,
Yes, okay.
and right now, we don't have that option.
Right.
because I could see what they were, they wanted to be able to look at a whole month, which I think would be
Well,
great.
you'd be able to look
too.
at many months, because
Many
if
months,
you were
correct.
invited to the calendar itself, then even repeating ones, let's just say that at the beginning of our fiscal year, or whatever, Dean puts out the list of select board suggested meeting days. He could have that on a calendar, and he could do a repeat every second and fourth Monday and
Yeah.
put it on there, and
I want to see bike races, energy committee, is the energy
Yeah, like
or whoever.
Energy's there, Trails is there.
So probably a lot, there seems like, well, I guess I was thinking of the bike rides.
Those are
The one,
listed,
the library sale would be, the book sale,
yeah.
the, town party. Stuff like that.
what you'd have to do then is you'd have to basically get a town Gmail account And then you'd have to invite people and allow them to change things on it, if you wanted to go that route. And then they would be able to, we'll say the Energy Committee decided they were gonna have a meeting, they would be able to go open up that Google Town Calendar and put their event on, and everybody who has access to the calendar be able to see it.
Right.
And if the select board happened to approve several bike rides, Dean could get on it and put the several bike rides on that town Google Calendar, and anybody that has access to that Google Calendar would be able to look at it. So you would, if you had access to it, you'd be able to see, okay, well, all these bike runs, this is the date that they're going on, and this is
I
the
mean, I
date
think
of the Energy
soccer
Committee.
Jamboree could go on there. You know, because Nicole can put it on, you wouldn't have to.
I mean, a lot
I
of
wasn't
times,
looking to
Right.
give you
Right.
more work.
Yeah.
I just know that Fritz spoke of a
Yeah.
calendar
Yeah.
a year or two ago, and
right.
Knowing what's
It's a-
going
it's a-
on.
It would be a
So
lot,
then when I
it'd
heard
be a
this
lot
at the
easier than
Grange-
the current with a town webpage and trying to navigate through the webpage to each one of the organizations to find what's going on.
Yeah, and I don't know if it automatically populates, like if you become linked to it, would events populate into your calendar
If you were invited to the calendar, the
Right.
overall calendar, then if you put something on the calendar, when I open up my phone to my Gmail and
Yeah.
I'm connected to the calendar, within next refresh, it's there.
Right,
So it's not like it takes any amount of time, and I don't have to ask for it, it's there.
right.
So when I open up if I opened up my Town of Shalott
Yeah. I mean, I can-
email calendar, it would be there.
Yeah.
It does make it simpler but it's not, I'm not saying that you can't do it with the,
I'll tell that guy at
with the
Tech Group what
Microsoft
we're on.
Office, or.
Yeah, I mean, they
you know,
work great off. I use it, it works fine.
Yeah.
It's perfect. You can go to month, day, whatever you want, see what's going on in the future.
Yeah, I do
Out of
it. I
town.
use my Gmail calendar all the time for everything.
Well, maybe you can see how it works with the Grange and their targets.
I mean, and it can be different too. I mean, you could, if you put different sections in the calendar, if you put, not saying you wouldn't want to invite everybody for everything, but you could also put different labels on, which means you could have a public part for, we'll say a public one in your Gmail calendar, and then you do another calendar which you would invite certain people to. And so you wouldn't have to, you could use one Gmail account and you could put multiple different calendars within it, and the people that you invite to each one of those individual calendars within that giant calendar
Well, that
can
sounds
can be
That's what
seen.
we have here.
Yes.
Home, work,
Yeah.
you can have separate calendars all within them.
Right,
Yes.
so,
That's
what I
so
do.
if there happens to be
I was just looking.
if there happens to be an
for a
event,
second one.
right, but if there happens to be if you put one in for events, it'd be for everybody, you can invite
Right.
everybody. If it happened to be for the select board only, it could be, you could put a select board
Technology's
one on.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it could be as complicated as that, or it could be as simple as inviting everybody to just a single calendar and they see all the events.
Library meeting, corporate meeting,
Just go to
you
your
know.
work calendar or your town
Training.
calendar, and you
Yeah.
got it.
But actually, I think Fire and Rescue does do something like that, just for Fire and Rescue, not for the other organizations.
I don't know,
Right.
just seems like
Yeah.
something. I'll see what the Grange looks like.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. Any other updates? Minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 23rd as may be modified?
Yes.
That's seconded.
Yes.
Okay, July 23rd.
I thought I read in here that we were gonna do the MOA tonight.
We were, but Fritz is out of town.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now with Tom's surgery, it's not gonna be on the 27th.
It's gonna probably not be for a month, maybe.
And what are you doing about scheduling those review meetings, or where are we at with that?
I sent out the form to employees. Nicole did respond that she's ready, and I asked Matt if he would schedule that. He said he would.
So about when will they be?
Hopefully by the end of the month is,
Okay.
so.
Well, Christine pointed out there was some blanks on one of these a couple of weeks ago, and we missed them to be filled in.
Oh, the adjournment.
So we'll make sure there are no blanks here.
Oh, I did actually see a blank somewhere.
In this one?
Where did I see?
I didn't see it.
Oh, it wasn't, it's actually the next one.
Okay.
It's got a,
All in favor of the motion? Indicate saying aye. Aye. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as may be modified for July 30th, 2018?
yes.
Can't
You were not, oh, we don't have a majority here?
carry. Was not
Oh,
here.
that's right, I wasn't here.
So we'll just, we need a majority, right?
Yep, put those off.
Did you see a blank, by the way, that we should
Well,
draw?
on 143.
143. Oh. Oh, yeah, that was, oh, we went into the wastewater, right?
Yeah, actually Carrie ended up showing up for the wastewater part and I ended up leaving.
So did we
that's
have a
right.
majority or not? For a minute or two we did.
We had a majority when we went
Like,
in.
you were here
I was,
for the wastewater?
I stayed for about an hour.
yeah, I was
I
here
was here
for,
for
I was
that.
here for our regular meeting,
Wastewater.
but I walked by you on the leaving, so.
So the wastewater started, I'd say the fill in that blank would be, for the majority there, it'd be 6:30. But we're not gonna approve that tonight, because we don't have a majority. 6:30 PM is what, if we can remember that. Are there any more items to be brought up? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a
Yes.
motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Yes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.